100 hours. The Denmark Strait. 300 meters below the surface, in water cold enough to kill an unprotected man in 4 minutes. A detonation tears through the Atlantic floor. Not a seismic event, a shaped charge placed with precision. The shockwave travels through the bedrock and registers on every hydrophone array from Greenland to the Azores. What it registers as is a problem with no clean answer, because the acoustic signature on those sensors belongs to a Royal Navy submarine. The HMS Agamemnon has just gone dark. The Denmark Strait is not geography chosen at random. This 300-mile channel between Iceland and Greenland is the singular choke point through which the Russian Northern Fleet must pass to reach the open Atlantic. Beneath its floor runs the fiber optic cable infrastructure that allows Washington to maintain continuous acoustic surveillance of every Soviet-era and post-Soviet submarine that has ever put to sea from Severomorsk. It is, in practical terms, the nervous system of NATO's northern flank. Cutting it is not a military strike, it is a lobotomy. And tonight, the hands holding the cutting tool are British. The Agamemnon is a Trafalgar successor nuclear-powered attack submarine, one of the quietest platforms the Royal Navy operates. Anechoic coating on every external surface. Pump jet propulsor instead of a conventional screw. At slow speed in deep water, she produces a noise profile that the most sensitive American passive sonar arrays struggle to resolve from background ocean ambience. She has just severed all encrypted communication with Northwood. She has just dropped a pattern of high-intensity acoustic noise buoys across a 4-square-mile sector, flooding the frequency bands that U.S. underwater sensor networks depend on with broadband interference. She has just deployed a team of special boat service operators in SDV Mark 8 diver delivery vehicles, 6-man submersibles running on electric propulsion, moving through crushing pressure at 300 meters to place demolition charges against the cable conduits buried in the seafloor. $1 billion in undersea infrastructure being destroyed by an ally. The response out of Washington arrives with a speed that reflects how thoroughly this scenario had been wargamed, which is to say, not at all. The USS New Jersey, a Virginia-class Block 5 attack submarine, hull designation SSN 796, carrying the most advanced AI-augmented sonar processing suite currently deployed at sea, is vectored into the Denmark Strait at maximum sustainable speed. Her AN/BQQ-10 sonar system is running every processing algorithm in its library, attempting to cut through the wall of British acoustic noise and build a targeting solution on the Agamemnon. The American captain transmits on the emergency underwater acoustic communications channel. The signal carries through steel and salt water. British vessel, you are operating in a restricted military zone in violation of standing agreements. Cease all activity immediately. This is your only warning before we are authorized to engage. The Agamemnon's response comes at 0430, not on the communications channel. Her torpedo tubes open. An exercise weapon, a training round carrying no warhead, but with full acoustic signature, launches on a direct bearing toward the New Jersey. 30,000 pounds of steel moving at 55 knots through water that transmits sound 5 times faster than air. The New Jersey's passive sonar registers the launch transient before the weapon has traveled 200 meters. The American sub brakes hard, 45 degrees of dive angle, internal alarms cycling through red, emergency acoustic decoys ejecting from the countermeasures dispensers and filling the water column with false returns. To every sensor network and signals intelligence asset monitoring the Denmark Strait at that moment, the picture is unambiguous. 2 NATO allies, the United States and the United Kingdom, are engaged in live submarine combat in the most strategically sensitive waterway on the planet. The alliance has fractured. The northern flank is undefended. The Atlantic gateway is open. This is exactly what someone else has been waiting for. 0330. While the American and British submarines are locked in their engagement in the upper water column, something else is moving in the trenches below. At 1,200 feet, approaching the structural limits of most submarine pressure hulls, the Russian nuclear-powered attack submarine Kazan is descending into the acoustic shadow zone. The Kazan is a Project 885M Yasen M class boat, the most capable submarine Russia has ever fielded. Variable depth towed sonar array, spherical bow sonar with frequency ranges that extend below what most NATO passive systems monitor. 12 vertical launch tubes in addition to her torpedo battery. She is not, by any realistic measure, a boat that should be underestimated. Her captain is running a specific playbook. At this depth, the thermocline layers in the Denmark Strait create refractive boundaries that bend sonar propagation away from the surface, creating zones of acoustic shadow that should render the Kazan invisible to everything above her. He has descended into what his training materials call a guaranteed sanctuary. He is moving slowly. He is running on electric drive, batteries fully charged, diesel generators silent. He is a ghost at the bottom of the world's most dangerous choke point. What he is deploying would be, if his assumptions were correct, the intelligence collection operation of the decade. The Kazan releases 2 Galtel autonomous underwater vehicles, torpedo-shaped robots running quiet electric thrusters equipped with non-contact electromagnetic induction sensors. These devices do not need to physically breach a cable to read it. They hover within centimeters of the conduit and capture the electromagnetic field generated by the data traffic flowing through the fiber. Encrypted or not, the raw signal can be recorded and the metadata analyzed. Transmission volumes, timing patterns, routing signatures, all of it available without leaving a mark on the cable itself. The digital equivalent of pressing a glass against a wall to hear a conversation through concrete. The Kazan's crew believes they are invisible. They believe they are stealing from a distracted adversary. The rhythmic sweep of the Galtel robot's positioning sonar, the low hum of their thrusters, to the Russian crew, these sounds represent the most valuable intelligence operation their service has run in years. Every one of those sounds is being recorded by sensors the Kazan's crew cannot detect and does not know exist. But the Kazan is not the only predator that moved when the Allied confrontation started. At the narrowest navigable point of the Denmark Strait, where the underwater topography compresses into a channel that forces any transiting submarine through a predictable corridor, the Chinese Type 093B Shang-class attack submarine has been sitting in a cold launch position since before the Agamemnon fired its first noise buoy. Beijing's objective is not intelligence. Beijing is not here to collect. Beijing is here to close the door. The Shang releases its asymmetric weapon of choice, smart acoustic mines. These are not contact-fused explosives. They are networked autonomous devices that anchor to the seafloor and activate their own sonar emission systems, broadcasting a continuous acoustic signature tuned to match the propulsion and machinery noise profile of a Virginia-class submarine. They are decoys that sound like American boats, designed to force any submarine operating in the strait to either engage them or maneuver around them, in either case revealing its own position in the process. Inside the HMS Agamemnon, the fire control computers process the new acoustic contact. The signature analysis returns a result, high confidence match to a Virginia-class SSN. The system interprets it as the New Jersey, repositioned, weapons hot, inbound on an attack bearing. The Agamemnon brakes hard, emergency ballast blown, magnesium decoy flares ejected into the water column, burning white in the darkness 300 meters below the surface. The British crew, already running on adrenaline after their engagement with the Americans, now believes the Americans have had enough and launched a live weapon. By 0630, the Denmark Strait contains an American submarine hunting a British one through a wall of acoustic interference, a Russian intelligence platform hovering against a NATO cable in an acoustic shadow zone, a Chinese attack submarine seeding the choke point with false signatures, and a British submarine in full emergency evasion from a threat that does not exist. 4 submarines, 3 nations, 0 coordination between the adversaries. Complete chaos, or so it appears. What Moscow and Beijing have not accounted for, what their entire operational concept failed to model, is the cable they are stealing from. The fiber optic conduit that the Kazan's Galtel robots are pressing their induction sensors against is not carrying operational military traffic. It is not the NATO surveillance backbone. That infrastructure was quietly rerouted 6 weeks ago, the moment satellite reconnaissance detected the pattern of Russian and Chinese submarine transits that suggested this operation was being planned. What the cable is carrying is something else entirely. The moment the Galtel robot's electromagnetic sensors make contact with the conduit, the cable's active countermeasure system triggers. A directed high-voltage electromagnetic surge propagates through the induction field. Not enough to destroy the robots, but more than enough to traverse the induction link in reverse, pushing a signal back into the Galtel sensor electronics and from there into the acoustic data bus that connects them to the Kazan's processing systems. The connection runs both directions. Inside the Kazan, the intrusion takes less than 4 seconds. The entire event reads on the crew's displays as a routine data packet. What it contains is a piece of software that the NSA's Tailored Access Operations Division spent 8 months engineering specifically for the processor architecture used in the Galtil's control systems. It does not announce itself. It does not trigger any alarm. It begins copying mission-critical source code, acoustic signature libraries, torpedo guidance programming, deep layer encryption key structures, every piece of data that makes the Kazan the platform she is. All of it moving through the induction link, up through the cable's active antenna structure, and from there, via the Starshield military satellite constellation to server architecture at Fort Meade. In the Shang's combat management system, the same process unfolds through a different pathway. The Smart Mine's acoustic emissions creating a carrier wave that the New Jersey's forward sonar array has been using as a data channel since the first mine deployed. Moscow and Beijing sent their most capable submarines to steal American secrets. They handed over their own instead. What happens next is not a response. It is a reveal. The USS New Jersey ceases its evasion. The Agamemnon ceases its emergency turn. Both submarines had been performing, the confrontation between them scripted, rehearsed, and executed with the specific purpose of drawing the Russian and Chinese boats into the strait and holding their attention on the surface drama while the collection operation ran below. The New Jersey deploys 4 Orca extra-large unmanned undersea vehicles, autonomous submarines the size of a large torpedo running on stored energy cells that had been lying dormant under a meter of silt on the seafloor for the past 10 days. They activate simultaneously, accelerating to 35 knots and executing a coordinated 3-dimensional weave pattern through the narrowest section of the strait. The crossing trajectories and speed differentials generate pressure vortices, turbulence intense enough at close range to disrupt the hydrodynamic control surfaces of a maneuvering submarine. The Kazan, still in her deep shadow zone, finds herself in water that is no longer cooperating. Hydroplane authority drops, depth control becomes a fight. Her captain orders an emergency blow, high-pressure air into the ballast tanks, and the submarine begins rising uncontrolled through water churning with artificial turbulence. Her hull orientation system struggling to stabilize a platform designed for calm, deep water, now tumbling through a mechanically generated maelstrom. The Shang, caught in the same vortex field, loses steerage. Her automatic depth control system makes 6 corrections in 3 seconds, each one fighting the previous. She is not sinking, but she is not flying either. She is a multi-billion-dollar nuclear submarine being tossed in a washing machine of someone else's making. Then the New Jersey activates a system that does not appear on any published equipment manifest. A resonant frequency projector, a directed acoustic device that can tune its emission to match the structural resonant frequency of a specific hull geometry. Every submarine class has one. Find the frequency at which the steel of a particular hull design begins to resonate, project it at sufficient power, and the effect inside that hull is total. Displays vibrating off their mounts, instruments losing calibration, crew members unable to hear each other over the harmonic screaming of the bulkheads themselves. Not dangerous to the hull at these power levels. Utterly incapacitating to everyone inside it. The Kazan's crew experiences what sounds like the submarine coming apart. It is not. But the distinction requires clarity of thought that is not available when 10,000 watts of resonant acoustic energy is transmitted through the pressure hull you are standing inside. The HMS Agamemnon, now operating in its actual role, floods the Denmark Strait with a 1,000 decibel active sonar pulse. Not searching, announcing. Every passive receiver in the strait, on both sides, registers the Agamemnon's position and power output simultaneously. It is a statement of presence that says, "We were here the entire time, and we knew where you were." A blue-green laser from the New Jersey's photonics mast sweeps through the water column and holds a point of light steady on the Kazan's conning tower. Blue-green light penetrates seawater to depths that other wavelengths cannot. The Kazan's optical sensors pick it up. The targeting cross that laser projects carries one meaning, delivered without ambiguity across 400 meters of cold Atlantic water. We have a solution on you. We have had one for some time. You are alive because we have not decided otherwise. The emergency ballast blow from both Russian and Chinese submarines breaks the surface simultaneously. 2 columns of white spray and shattered ice erupt into Arctic air. The hulls breach and stabilize on the surface, not by choice, but because the alternative was continued tumbling in uncontrolled water. Above them, a combined US-UK surface group that had been running dark with all active emissions suppressed, now lights up its fire control radars. Weapons quality tracks, locked solutions, every system showing ready, not firing, not needing to. The operation is complete. What Moscow and Beijing rehearsed as a precision intelligence raid, leveraging a manufactured Allied crisis to harvest the most sensitive data in the NATO surveillance architecture, became instead the most comprehensive voluntary disclosure of adversary submarine systems data since the Cold War. Their encryption keys are in American servers. Their acoustic signatures are cataloged. Their autonomous vehicle source code has been disassembled and rebuilt in a laboratory in Maryland. They came to read NATO's playbook. They wrote a new chapter in ours. The architecture of what happened in the Denmark Strait that night was never about defending a cable or stopping a theft. It was about creating conditions precise enough that the adversary's own operational logic would deliver them into a trap built to their exact specifications. Every element of the Allied confrontation, every torpedo fired, every emergency maneuver executed, every noise buoy dropped, was a stage direction. The script had been written months before. The cast performed it exactly as rehearsed, and the audience, convinced they were watching a genuine fracture in Western Alliance cohesion, walked through the door it opened. That is not intelligence work as it is described in policy papers. That is something closer to architecture, designing an environment so specifically that the adversary's own decision-making process becomes the mechanism of their defeat. The lesson is not complicated, but it is absolute. There is a difference between understanding that deception is a tool and understanding how to build one so precisely calibrated that it functions even when the target suspects something is wrong. Russia and China are serious adversaries with serious capabilities. In the Denmark Strait that night, those capabilities were used against them by a system that had studied them long enough to predict, with operational confidence, exactly how they would be deployed. In the deep water beneath the Arctic, the most dangerous thing is not the predator you can track. It is the one that already knows where you are going before you leave port. If this breakdown gave you something worth thinking about, subscribe and share it. More of these analyses keep coming as long as you're here for them.